She was 8 years old, barefoot in a blizzard, and when they finally found her, she whispered about a frozen castle in the woods that no one believed existed until it revealed a secret worth $245 million. Before we dive into this story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The snow fell in thick, angry sheets across the Montana wilderness, the kind of storm that erased roads and swallowed sound. Park Ranger Derek Hayes gripped the steering wheel of his truck, squinting through the windshield at the wall of white ahead. He was 52 years old, weathered by decades of mountain winters, but this storm felt different, heavier, like the sky itself was collapsing. His radio crackled. "Derek, you copy?" It was Sharon from dispatch, her voice tight with urgency. "Go ahead," he said, leaning forward, as if that would help him see through the blizzard. "We got a call from Highway 7. Trucker said he saw something small moving on the shoulder, about 3 miles north of Pine Creek. Said it looked like a child." Derek's stomach dropped. "A child? In this?" "That's what he said. State police are 20 minutes out minimum. You're closer." He didn't hesitate. "I'm on it." The heater in his truck groaned as he pushed the vehicle forward, tires fighting for purchase on the icy road. The wind screamed against the windows. Visibility was maybe 10 feet. He'd been a ranger in these mountains for 27 years, had pulled lost hikers from ravines and talked down panicked climbers from cliff faces. But a child alone in a blizzard, that was every parent's nightmare, every first responder's worst call. His headlights cut through the white chaos, and then he saw it. A figure, small and dark against the snow, stumbling along the edge of the road. Derek's heart lurched. He slammed on the brakes, threw the truck into park, and was out the door before his mind could catch up to his body. The cold hit him like a physical blow. The wind tore at his coat, and snow immediately caked his beard. But none of that mattered, because there, 20 feet ahead, was a little girl. She wore a thin pink jacket, ripped jeans, and no shoes. Her feet were bleeding, leaving small red prints in the snow. Her dark hair whipped around her face, and her lips had turned blue. She was shaking so violently she could barely stand. "Hey!" Derek shouted over the wind, moving toward her carefully. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm here to help." The girl turned. Her eyes were enormous, brown and glassy with cold. She stared at him like she wasn't sure he was real. Derek pulled off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her tiny frame. She disappeared inside it. "I've got you," he said, his voice cracking. "You're safe now." He scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing. Her skin was ice against his hands. He ran back to the truck, yanked open the door, and set her gently on the passenger seat. He cranked the heat to maximum, grabbed the emergency blanket from behind the seat, and tucked it around her. "What's your name?" he asked, rubbing her hands between his, trying to get circulation back. She didn't answer, just stared at him with those huge, haunted eyes. "It's okay," Derek said softly. "You don't have to talk. Let's just get you warm." He radioed dispatch. "Sharon, I found her. Female child, approximately 7 or 8 years old. Severe hypothermia. I'm taking her to Mercy General. Copy that. Ambulance is en route, but stuck behind a jackknifed semi. You're faster. Be careful out there." The drive down the mountain was a nightmare. The road had become a river of ice. Every turn felt like the truck might slide off into darkness. But Derek had driven these roads his whole adult life. His hands stayed steady on the wheel. Beside him, the little girl had stopped shaking. That wasn't a good sign. She stared straight ahead, unblinking. "Stay with me," Derek said, reaching over to squeeze her shoulder. "We're almost there. Just stay with me." Her lips moved. He barely heard it. "What was that, honey?" "Maya," she whispered. Her voice was small and broken. "My name is Maya." Something in Derek's chest cracked wide open. "Maya. That's a beautiful name." "I'm Derek." She blinked slowly. Like even that took effort. Are you real? The question nearly destroyed him. Yeah, sweetheart. I'm real. And I'm not going anywhere. They made it to Mercy General 43 minutes later. Medical staff rushed out and swept Maya away on a gurney. Doctors shouting orders, nurses hooking up IVs and monitors. Derek stood in the fluorescent hallway, still covered in snow, watching through the window as they worked on her. He'd seen a lot in his years as a ranger. Bears, avalanches, cliffs that dropped into nothing. But he'd never seen anything as terrifying as that little girl's bloody footprints in the snow. A nurse touched his arm. Sir? The doctor wants to talk to you. Dr. Sarah Chen was young, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She met him in a small consultation room that smelled like coffee and antiseptic. She's going to make it, doctor, Chen said immediately, and Derek's knees nearly gave out. Severe hypothermia, frostbite on her toes, dehydration, malnutrition. But she's stable. Thank God, Derek breathed. She's lucky you found her when you did. Another hour. Dr. Chen didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The police are on their way. Do you know anything about her? Just her name. Maya. She's been through something, doctor, Chen said quietly. Old bruises, healed fractures, signs of long-term neglect. Derek's hands curled into fists. Someone hurt her. Someone's been hurting her for a while. The police arrived an hour later. Detective Laura Martinez was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes, and a notebook she filled with Derek's account of finding Maya. When she was done, she sighed heavily. We ran her through the system, Martinez said. Maya Reeves, 8 years old. She's been in the foster care system since she was 6 months old. 6 months, Derek repeated. Mother was an addict. Abandoned her at a hospital. Maya's been bounced around ever since. 12 different homes in 7 years. Last placement was with a couple about 40 miles from where you found her. They reported her missing 3 days ago. 3 days? Derek's voice rose. She was out there for 3 days? Martinez nodded grimly. They claim she ran away. We're investigating. She was barefoot in a blizzard. I know. Martinez closed her notebook. Listen, Derek. I've seen a lot of these cases. Foster system is overwhelmed. Good people trying their best. But kids like Maya, they slip through the cracks. She's been rejected by so many families, she probably thinks the whole world is temporary. Derek looked through the window at the hospital room, where Maya lay sleeping. Finally warm, finally safe. What happens to her now? Social services will place her somewhere new, hopefully somewhere better. Martinez didn't sound convinced. Neither was Derek. The storm didn't let up for 3 more days. Roads were impassable. The mountain pass closed. The whole region was locked down under 2 feet of snow. Derek couldn't get back to his cabin, and honestly, he didn't want to leave the hospital anyway. He spent those days in Maya's room. At first, she barely spoke, just stared at the ceiling or out the window at the falling snow. But slowly, she began to thaw. On the second day, she asked, "Why did you stop?" Derek looked up from the magazine he'd been pretending to read. "What do you mean? On the road? Why did you stop for me?" The question gutted him. "Because you needed help. Nobody else stopped." "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry about that." She was quiet for a long time. Then, the people before, the foster people, they said I was too much trouble, that I asked too many questions, made too much noise. They said nobody would ever want to keep me. Derek set down his magazine and moved to sit on the edge of her bed. "Maya, listen to me. You're not too much of anything. You're smart and brave and strong. What those people said, that's about them, not you. You hear me?" She looked at him with those big brown eyes, and he saw something there he recognized. Doubt, the kind that burrows deep and never quite leaves. "I believe you," she said quietly, but her voice suggested she'd heard promises before. On the third day, Maya finally started talking more. She told him about the foster homes. Some were okay, some were bad. One had a dog she'd loved, named Cooper. Another had a woman who baked cookies every Sunday. But none of them kept her. They always send me back, Maya said, tracing patterns on her blanket with one finger. I try to be good. I try to be quiet. But something always goes wrong. That's not your fault, Derek said for the 100th time. She shrugged, like she'd stopped believing that a long time ago. That afternoon, while Maya napped, Derek called his ex-wife. Rachel answered on the third ring. Derek, is everything okay? They'd been divorced for 6 years. It was amicable, as divorces go. No kids, no drama, just two people who wanted different things. She'd moved to Seattle. He'd stayed in the mountains. They still talked every few months. I need to tell you something, Derek said, and he told her everything, about finding Maya, about her story, about the way she'd asked why he stopped. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, You want to foster her? I don't know. Maybe. She's been through so much, Rachel. And she's got nobody. You'd be good at it, Rachel said softly. You were always good with kids. That's one of the things I loved about you. I'm 52 years old. I live alone in a cabin. I work 12-hour shifts. And you found a child dying in a blizzard and saved her life. You've been at that hospital for 3 days. Derek, you care about this girl. He rubbed his face. I do. Then do something about it. On the 4th day, the roads opened. Social services came to collect Maya, a tired woman named Patricia with a clipboard and a forced smile. You've been very kind, Patricia said to Derek, but we need to place Maya in an appropriate home. Where? Derek asked. We have a group home about 60 miles south. It's temporary, until we can find a family. A group home. Derek's jaw tightened. She needs stability. We're doing our best with limited resources. Maya sat on the hospital bed, already dressed in donated clothes that didn't fit right. She looked small and resigned, like this was just another chapter in a story she'd already memorized. Derek made a decision. What if I fostered her? Patricia blinked. You? I'm licensed for search and rescue, clean record, steady job, own my home. Mr. Hayes, fostering is a big commitment. I know. Patricia looked at Maya, then back at Derek. I'll need to run a background check. Inspect your home. It'll take time. How much time? A few weeks, maybe. And where does Maya stay until then? Patricia hesitated. The group home. Derek looked at Maya. She was staring at her hands, already pulling back into herself, already protecting against the next rejection. No, Derek said. She stays with me. I'll fill out whatever forms you need. Do whatever inspections. But she's not going to another temporary place. Not after everything she's been through. Patricia studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Let me make some calls. It took 6 hours, a mountain of paperwork, and a quick home inspection from a social worker who drove through slushy roads to reach Derek's cabin. But by nightfall, Maya was officially in Derek's temporary custody. The cabin was small, just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that opened into a living room with a stone fireplace. Derek gave Maya the guest room. It was sparse, just a bed and a dresser, but he'd thrown on fresh sheets and put a lamp on the nightstand. Maya stood in the doorway, staring at the room like it was a museum exhibit. It's not much, Derek said, but it's warm, and it's safe, and it's yours for as long as you need it. She set down the small bag of donated clothes and turned to look at him. How long will that be? Derek knelt down so they were eye level. I don't know, Maya, but I'm not going to send you away because you're too much trouble, or too loud, or ask too many questions. You understand? She nodded slowly. Good. Now, are you hungry? I make pretty decent grilled cheese. For the first time since he'd found her, Maya almost smiled. The first week was an adjustment. Derek had lived alone for 6 years. He was used to silence, to eating dinner, standing at the counter, to falling asleep, watching old westerns. Suddenly there was another person in the house. A small, quiet person who moved like she was afraid to take up space. Maya was careful. She made her bed with military precision. She washed her dishes immediately. She never asked for anything. Derek had to coax her to pick what she wanted for breakfast, to choose a movie, to say when she was cold, or hungry, or tired. "You're allowed to have opinions," he said one morning when she'd shrugged for the third time about what cereal she wanted. "I don't want to be picky," she said. "You're not being picky. You're being human." She chose Cheerios. It felt like a victory. School was another matter. Maya had missed so much, bouncing between homes and districts. Her reading was behind. Her math was worse. But she was sharp. Derek could see it in the way she watched everything, absorbed information, asked questions when she felt safe enough. They fell into a routine. Derek would make breakfast. Maya would eat quietly. He'd drive her to the small elementary school in town, then head to work. After school, she'd go to the ranger station with him, doing homework at a desk in the corner, while he filed reports and answered calls. They'd drive home together as the sun set over the mountains. It was simple. It was quiet. And slowly, carefully, Maya began to relax. 2 weeks after she'd moved in, something changed. They were eating dinner, spaghetti that Derek had only slightly burned, when Maya set down her fork. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Of course." She hesitated, chewing her lip. "When I was out there, in the snow, I wasn't just walking. I was trying to find something." Derek set down his own fork. "What were you trying to find?" "A place," she said. "I saw it once, when I was with one of my other families. We were hiking, and I got lost for a little bit. I found this thing in the woods. It was amazing." "What kind of thing?" Maya's eyes lit up. The first real excitement he'd seen from her. It was like a castle, but in the trees. All made of wood and glass, and everything was frozen. Icicles everywhere, like diamonds. There were stairs going up, and rooms, and windows. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Derek smiled gently. "That sounds wonderful, Maya. You don't believe me." Her face fell. "No, I believe you saw something. Sometimes when we're scared or lost, our minds can—" "It was real," she insisted. "I drew pictures of it. I remember everything." Derek reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Okay, I believe you." But he didn't. Not really. He figured she'd seen an old hunting stand, or maybe abandoned structure, and her imagination had filled in the rest. Kids did that, especially kids who'd been through trauma. Maya didn't bring it up again for several days, but Derek noticed her drawing. Sketches on scrap paper. Always the same thing. An elaborate treehouse with multiple levels, peaked roofs, circular windows. It was detailed, too detailed for an 8-year-old's imagination. One night, he picked up one of her drawings. "This is really good, Maya." She looked up from her homework. That's what it looked like. The frozen castle. "Where did you say you saw it?" "In the woods, north of where I was. Before, maybe an hour walking." Derek studied the drawing. Something about it nagged at him. He knew these woods. He'd patrolled every trail, mapped every ridge. There wasn't anything like this that he knew of. But then again, there were parts of the forest he rarely went. Private property. Old estates. The mountains had their secrets. "Hey," he said. "How about this weekend? If the weather's good, we take a hike. You can show me where you think you saw it." Maya's whole face transformed. "Really, really. We'll make an adventure of it." Saturday dawned clear and cold. The kind of mountain morning where the air hurt your lungs, and the sky was so blue it looked painted. Derek packed sandwiches, water, a first aid kit, and a compass. Maya bounced around the cabin, more animated than he'd ever seen her. They drove north, toward the area where Derek had found her. Maya pressed her face to the window, watching the landscape. "There," she said suddenly, pointing. "Turn there." Derek pulled onto a narrow dirt road, that barely qualified as a road. It was marked private property, but the gate was old and rusted, hanging open. They parked and started walking. The forest was dense here. Pines towered overhead, their branches heavy with old snow. Derek had a GPS unit clipped to his belt and a map in his pocket, but Maya walked with purpose, like she knew exactly where she was going. They hiked for 40 minutes. Derek was starting to think they should turn back when Maya stopped suddenly. "There," she whispered, pointing through the trees. Derek followed her gaze and froze. Through the dense evergreens, something gleamed, something that didn't belong. He moved forward slowly, pushing through branches, and then stopped dead. It was real. Rising from the forest floor, like something out of a fairy tale, was the most elaborate treehouse Derek had ever seen. Not a treehouse, actually, a compound. Multiple structures connected by bridges and platforms, built among and around 5 massive old-growth pines. The whole thing was at least 40 feet tall, with peaked roofs, circular windows, and elaborate railings. And Maya had been right about another thing. It was frozen. Every surface glittered with ice. Icicles hung like chandeliers from the eaves. The windows were frosted over, but behind the ice, Derek could see glass. Real glass. "I told you," Maya said, quietly beside him. Derek couldn't speak. He just stared. This wasn't some abandoned hunting stand. This was architecture. This was expensive. Someone had built this. Someone with money and skill. But who? And when? And why here? Hidden miles from any road. "Can we go inside?" Maya asked. Derek's ranger instincts kicked in. This was private property. This was potentially dangerous. The structure was old, maybe decades old, and ice-covered. It could be unstable. But his curiosity was stronger. "Stay close to me," he said. They approached carefully. At the base of the main tree was a door, real hardwood, intricately carved with images of leaves and birds. It had a handle but no visible lock. Derek tried it. The door swung open with a groan. Inside was darkness. Derek pulled out his flashlight and swept the beam around. His breath caught. The interior was pristine. Hardwood floors, barely dusty. Built-in shelves lined the walls. There was furniture, a small table, and chairs, all carved from beautiful wood. In the corner was a ladder leading up to the next level. "Someone lived here," Derek said, more to himself than Maya. "Who?" Maya whispered. "I don't know." They explored slowly, carefully. The main floor had a sitting area and what looked like a small kitchen, though there was no running water Derek could see. The ladder led to a second level, which opened into a bedroom. A real bed with a metal frame and a mattress wrapped in plastic. More shelves. Books, dozens of them, wrapped in protective covers. Derek picked one up. The title was embossed in gold, Jane Eyre. He opened the cover. On the first page, in elegant handwriting, it said, "Property of Eleanor Whitmore, 1993. Eleanor Whitmore," Derek repeated. The name meant nothing to him. Maya had moved to the window. She wiped away frost and peered out. "Derek, there's more." He joined her. Through the window, he could see another structure connected by a bridge. And beyond that, another. This wasn't just a treehouse. It was a complex. They spent the next hour exploring. There were 6 separate structures in total, all connected. One was clearly a library, floor to ceiling with books. Another was an art studio with canvases and dried paint. There was a tiny bathroom with a composting toilet, a storage room filled with canned goods, old but still sealed. And at the very top, accessed by the narrowest ladder, was an observation deck with a telescope pointing at the sky. "Whoever lived here," Derek said. "They stayed a long time, and they wanted to be alone." Maya touched the books gently, reverently. Maybe they were hiding. Maybe. They found journals, notebooks filled with handwriting, sketches, lists. Derek would need time to read through them, but one entry caught his eye. March 5th, 2002. Another winter alone. Another season of silence. My family thinks I'm dead. Perhaps I am. Perhaps this is what death feels like when you choose it freely. I wonder if they'll ever find this place. I wonder if they'll understand why I left. Derek closed the journal. Maya, we need to document this. And we need to figure out who Eleanor Whitmore was. They were about to leave when Maya noticed something. Derek, what's that? She was pointing at the ceiling of the main bedroom. There was a seam, almost invisible, an outline of a door, an attic hatch. Derek pulled the bed over, climbed on top, and pushed. The hatch resisted, then gave way with a crack of breaking ice. Cold air rushed out. Derek hoisted himself up and shined his flashlight into the darkness. What he saw made his heart stop. The attic was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet, but in the center, sitting on a reinforced platform, was an old steamer trunk, the kind people used to take on ocean voyages. It was locked, with a brass padlock that had frozen solid. What is it? Maya called up. I don't know, Derek said, but his hands were shaking as he climbed back down. Because something in his gut, the same instinct that had made him stop on that snowy road, told him that whatever was in that trunk was going to change everything. We need to come back, he said to Maya, with better equipment and maybe some help. Maya looked at the hatch, then at him. Do you think there's treasure? Derek laughed, but it sounded nervous even to his own ears. I don't know, kiddo, but I think we just found something nobody was supposed to find. As they hiked back to the truck, Derek couldn't stop thinking about that trunk, about Eleanor Whitmore, about a woman who built a castle in the trees and disappeared from the world, and about the fact that an 8-year-old girl who'd been rejected by everyone had led him to it. What happens next will shatter everything Derek thought he knew about this discovery, reveal a fortune hidden for decades, and prove that Maya's greatest treasure wasn't in that frozen attic, it was the life she was about to build. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Derek didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind move through the pines outside his window. His mind kept returning to that attic, to the brass padlock gleaming in his flashlight beam, to the weight of that old steamer trunk sitting in frozen darkness. He'd spent 27 years in these mountains. He knew the stories. Old mining claims, abandoned homesteads, rumors of hermits and recluses who'd disappeared into the wilderness. But this was different. Eleanor Whitmore hadn't just disappeared. She'd built something, a sanctuary, a work of art hidden among the trees, and Maya had found it. At breakfast, Maya barely touched her cereal. She kept glancing at Derek, her eyes bright with questions she was afraid to ask. We're going back today, Derek said finally. After I make a few calls. Maya's whole face lit up. Really? Really? But Maya, listen. Whatever we find up there, it belongs to someone. We have to be careful. We have to do this right. She nodded solemnly. I know. Derek's first call was to his supervisor at the Park Service. He explained what they'd found, leaving out some of the details. His supervisor, a man named Robert Chen who'd worked these mountains even longer than Derek, listened quietly. You're on private property, Robert said when Derek finished. I know, but the gate was open, and nobody's maintained that place in years, maybe decades. Still, Derek, you need to find out who owns the land. Contact the county assessor. Figure out if there's an estate. Do this by the book. I will. And Derek? Be careful. Things like this, when they involve money or history, they get complicated fast. Derek hung up and made his second call to the Flathead County Assessor's office. A bored-sounding clerk named Marge answered. I need information about a property, Derek said, giving her the approximate coordinates. Who owns it? He heard typing. Then a pause. More typing. That's interesting, Marge said. What is? Properties listed under the Whitmore Family Trust. But according to this, there's been no activity on the account since 2009. Taxes are current, though, paid automatically from some kind of endowment. Who manages the trust? Doesn't say. Just lists a law firm out of Missoula, Brennan and Associates. But there's a note here that they dissolved in 2015. Derek wrote down everything. So, nobody's actively managing this property. Not that I can see. Might be in probate. Might be abandoned. You'd have to contact a lawyer to know for sure. Derek thanked her and hung up. The picture was getting clearer and murkier at the same time. Someone was paying taxes on that land, but nobody seemed to know or care what was on it. He looked at Maya, who was washing her cereal bowl with intense concentration. This little girl who'd been thrown away by the system, who'd survived 3 days in a blizzard, who'd led him to something extraordinary. Whatever was in that attic could change her life. He felt it in his bones. "Get your coat," he said. "We've got a mystery to solve." They drove back to the frozen treehouse, with Derek's truck loaded with tools. Bolt cutters for the padlock, a portable generator and lights, his climbing gear, in case the structure proved unstable, a camera to document everything. The forest was quieter today, the kind of stillness that comes after snow when even the birds hold their breath. Maya walked beside him, her small hand occasionally reaching out to touch his arm, like she needed to confirm he was still there. The treehouse appeared through the trees like a mirage, ice glittering in the late morning sun. Derek had half convinced himself he'd imagined how elaborate it was. But no, if anything, it was more impressive in full daylight. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Hand-carved beams, copper gutters, gone green with age, stained glass in some of the windows. Someone loved this place, Derek said quietly. They climbed up to the main bedroom. Derek positioned a ladder under the attic hatch and climbed through, this time with proper lighting. The portable LED lantern filled the small space with harsh white light. The trunk sat exactly where he'd seen it before. It was old, probably early 20th century, made of leather and wood with brass fittings. The padlock was modern, though installed much later. Derek pulled out the bolt cutters. He hesitated for just a moment, feeling like he was about to open something that was meant to stay closed. Then he squeezed. The padlock broke with a sharp crack. Derek set down the cutters and slowly lifted the lid. The hinges groaned, and then he was staring at a treasure that made his breath catch. The trunk was packed carefully, every item wrapped and labeled. On top was a letter in a plastic sleeve. Derek lifted it with shaking hands. To whoever finds this, it began in elegant handwriting. "If you are reading this, then I am dead, and my sanctuary has finally been discovered. I do not know if that makes me sad or relieved. Perhaps both. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I was born in 1957 to the Whitmore banking family of San Francisco. I was raised in luxury and suffocated by expectation. When I was 32 years old, I did what everyone thought was impossible. I left. I staged my death. A boating accident off the coast. They never found a body because there was no body to find. I took a portion of my inheritance, the portion I could access without triggering investigations, and I disappeared. I built this place over 5 years. I lived here for 17 years. I read. I painted. I watched the seasons change. I was alone, yes, but I was free. The most glorious freedom I have ever known. In this trunk, I have left what remains. Not for my family, who would not understand. Not for the government, who would only see dollar signs. For whoever finds it, with one condition: use it wisely. Use it to build something beautiful. Use it to be free. Derek's hands trembled as he set the letter aside. Beneath it were leather portfolios, each one labeled. The first one he opened made his heart stop. Bearer bonds, dozens of them, issued in 1985, each one worth $10,000. He counted quickly. 40 bonds, $400,000, plus decades of interest. The second portfolio held stamps, rare stamps, in protective sleeves with typed certificates of authenticity. Derek knew nothing about philately, but the dates alone told him these were valuable. 1850s, 1860s, pre-Civil War American stamps in pristine condition. The third portfolio made him sit down hard on the attic floor. Gold certificates. Real ones, from the 1920s, before the United States went off the gold standard. Each certificate represented actual gold held in Federal Reserves. 20 certificates, each for 100 troy ounces. Derek's mind spun, trying to calculate. Gold was trading at around $1,900 an ounce, last time he'd checked. 100 ounces times 20 certificates, times $1,900 per ounce. That was $3.8 million in gold alone. Derek? Maya's voice floated up from below. Did you find something? He couldn't answer. His throat had closed up. There was more. In the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in acid-free paper, were stock certificates. Companies Derek recognized: General Electric, IBM, Standard Oil, before it was broken up. All issued in Eleanor's name, never transferred, never sold. And finally, in a small velvet bag, jewelry. Nothing flashy. A string of pearls, a simple diamond ring, a gold watch. Things Eleanor had brought with her when she disappeared. Things she'd never sold because she hadn't needed to. Derek carefully photographed everything. Then he climbed back down the ladder, his legs unsteady. Maya was waiting, eyes wide. What was in there? Derek sat down heavily on the bed. Maya, come here. She sat beside him. He put his arm around her small shoulders. You know how you said you thought there might be treasure? She nodded. You were right. There's money up there. A lot of money. So much money, I can't even count it properly. Maya's eyes went huge. How much? Derek shook his head. I don't know exactly. Millions. Maybe tens of millions. Maybe more. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do we do? That was the question, wasn't it? Derek thought about the letter. About Eleanor Whitmore, who'd given up everything for freedom. About a little girl who'd never had anything except the clothes donated by strangers. I don't know, he admitted. But we're going to figure it out together. They sat in that frozen bedroom for a long time, Derek's mind racing through possibilities and problems. This wasn't like finding a $20 bill on the sidewalk. This was a fortune. This was someone's legacy. This had legal implications he couldn't begin to understand. But one thought kept rising above all the others. Maya. This little girl who'd suffered so much, who'd been rejected so many times, who'd found this place when she was lost and freezing. Could this be hers? Could Eleanor's gift of freedom become Maya's gift of security? Derek, Maya's small voice interrupted his thoughts. Are you going to send me away now? The question was a knife to his heart. What? No. Why would you think that? Because now there's money, and maybe you'll get in trouble. And people always send me away when things get complicated. Derek pulled her into a tight hug. Listen to me. I am not sending you away. Not now. Not ever. Do you understand? Whatever happens with this treasure, we're in it together. Maya buried her face in his jacket. He felt her nod. They packed up carefully. Derek took only the letter and one bearer bond as proof. Everything else stayed in the trunk. He locked the attic hatch and, using his climbing rope, secured the main door. Whatever happened next, he wanted this place protected. The drive back was quiet. Maya dozed against the window, exhausted by emotion and cold. Derek's mind wouldn't stop spinning. That evening, after Maya had gone to bed, Derek sat at his kitchen table with a beer he didn't drink and a phone he stared at for 20 minutes, before finally dialing. Patricia Chen answered on the second ring. She was a lawyer in Missoula, someone Derek had known since college. They'd stayed friends through marriages and divorces and decades of drift. Derek Hayes, she said warmly. It's been forever. What's going on? Patricia, I need legal advice. The kind that stays confidential. Her tone shifted immediately to professional. Attorney-client privilege. Talk to me. Derek told her everything. About finding Maya. About the treehouse. About Eleanor Whitmore and the trunk full of fortune. He read her the letter over the phone. When he finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Derek, do you understand what you're sitting on? Money. A lot of it. More than money. You're sitting on someone's hidden life. And legally, this is a minefield. Tell me. Patricia sighed. Okay. First, the good news. Eleanor Whitmore wrote a letter essentially bequeathing this to whoever found it. That's not legally binding, but it shows intent. Second, if she staged her death and never contacted her family again, and if enough time has passed, she can be declared legally dead. Her estate would then go through probate. And the bad news is that if she has living heirs, they have a claim. If the Whitmore family is still around, they could argue that Eleanor wasn't of sound mind, that the treasure was stolen, that you're trespassing. They could tie this up in court for years. Derek felt his hope deflating. So Maya gets nothing. I didn't say that. Derek, the fact that you found this on abandoned property, the fact that nobody's claimed it in decades, the fact that Eleanor's letter specifically says she wants it used by whoever finds it, all of that matters. But we need to do our homework first. What kind of homework? We need to find out if Eleanor Whitmore has living relatives. We need to trace the Whitmore family. We need to understand what happened to her estate after she disappeared. And we need to establish Maya's claim as the finder. Derek rubbed his face. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. And Derek, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that Maya won't get to keep all of it, or even most of it. She deserves it, Patricia. This kid, what she's been through, I know, and we'll fight for her. But the law isn't always about what's fair. It's about what's legal. They talked for another hour, Patricia taking notes, Derek answering questions. By the time they hung up, Derek had a plan. Patricia would start investigating the Whitmore family. Derek would document everything about the treehouse and its contents, and they'd move carefully, doing everything by the book. Because if there was any chance Maya could have security, could have a future, he'd fight for it, with everything he had. The next morning, Derek called Detective Martinez and told her about the discovery, leaving out specifics about the treasure's value. She agreed to meet him at the county recorder's office. You're sure about this? Martinez asked as they walked up the steps. Once you make this official, there's no taking it back, I'm sure. They spent the morning digging through records. The Whitmore family had owned the property since 1928. It had been purchased by Eleanor's grandfather, used as a hunting retreat. When Eleanor disappeared in 1989, the property went into a trust. The trust had paid taxes automatically for decades, but there was no trustee listed anymore. It's like someone set it up to run forever, Martinez said, squinting at old documents. But nobody's actually watching it. What happens to property like that? Eventually, Eshate. It reverts to the state, but that takes a long time and a lot of legal process. Derek felt a surge of hope. If the property had no clear owner, if Eleanor's family had abandoned it, then maybe, just maybe, Maya's claim was stronger. What Derek didn't know yet was that the Whitmore family hadn't disappeared. They'd just been waiting. And his phone calls, his questions, his careful documentation, all of it was leaving a trail that would lead straight back to Maya, and to a battle that would test everything he thought he knew about justice, family, and what it means to protect someone you love. That night, Derek received an email from Patricia. The subject line was simple: found them. He opened it with shaking hands. Eleanor Whitmore, Patricia had written, was the youngest daughter of Vincent and Catherine Whitmore. Vincent Whitmore founded Whitmore Capital in 1952. The company still exists, now run by Eleanor's nephew, Malcolm Whitmore. Eleanor had two older brothers, both deceased. One brother, Thomas, had a son, Malcolm. The other brother, James, had no children. Catherine Whitmore died in 2003. Vincent died in 2007. Malcolm Whitmore is 58 years old. He's a venture capitalist worth an estimated $400 million. And Derek, he's been looking for Eleanor for 35 years. Derek's blood ran cold. There was an attached file. A newspaper article from the San Francisco Chronicle, dated July 1989. The headline read, "Whitmore Harris, missing, presumed dead." The article detailed Eleanor's disappearance. A boat found capsized near the Golden Gate Bridge. No body recovered. The family had held a memorial service. They'd declared her legally dead in 1996. But according to Patricia's research, Malcolm Whitmore had never stopped looking. He'd hired private investigators. He'd followed up on sightings. He'd posted rewards. The man wanted to find his aunt, or maybe he wanted to find her money. At the bottom of the email, Patricia had written, "We need to be very careful. Malcolm Whitmore has resources and lawyers. If he finds out about this before we establish Maya's claim, he could shut us down completely. I'm filing paperwork tomorrow to declare the property abandoned and petition for Maya as finder. But Derek, this is going to get messy. Are you ready?" Derek looked at Maya's closed bedroom door. He thought about her bloody footprints in the snow, about the way she'd asked why he stopped, about 12 foster homes and 8 years of rejection. He typed back, "I'm ready. Let's fight for her." Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia worked around the clock. She filed motions. She tracked down records. She built a case arguing that Eleanor Whitmore had legally abandoned her property and fortune, that Maya had discovered it as a minor in distress, and that Eleanor's own letter constituted a transfer of ownership. Derek continued documenting everything. He brought a professional appraiser to the Treehouse, someone Patricia trusted. The man spent 2 days examining every item in the trunk. His final assessment made Derek's head spin. The bearer bonds, with interest, $620,000. The stamps, $4.2 million. Some were among the rarest American stamps in existence. The gold certificates, $3.8 million. The stock certificates. This was the shocking one. The companies had split, merged, changed, but tracked over decades, those original shares were now worth $83 million. The jewelry, $200,000. Total estimated value, $92 million. But that wasn't all. The treehouse itself, the land, the craftsmanship, it had value too. The appraiser estimated another $12 million for the property. $104 million, Derek said numbly when Patricia called with the final numbers. A little girl who had nothing just found $104 million. "If we can keep it," Patricia said. "Derek, I need to tell you something. Malcolm Whitmore knows." Derek's stomach dropped. "How?" "The county recorder. Someone in that office talks. We knew it was a risk. Malcolm's lawyers called me this morning. They're claiming the entire estate. They're arguing that Eleanor was mentally ill when she disappeared, that she couldn't legally give away family assets, and that as her only living relative, Malcolm is the rightful heir. What about Eleanor's letter? What about her intent? They're calling it the rambling of a disturbed woman. Derek, they're good. They're really good. And they have unlimited resources." Derek looked at Maya's drawings on his refrigerator. Sketches of the treehouse. A picture she'd drawn of the two of them holding hands. "What do we do?" he asked. "We fight. I'm putting together a legal team. We argue adverse possession, abandonment, finder's rights, and Eleanor's clear intent. We bring in child welfare. Show how Maya's circumstances make her deserving. We paint Malcolm Whitmore as a greedy relative who ignored this property for 30 years until he smelled money. Will it work?" Patricia was quiet. "I don't know. But Derek, there's something else. Something I found in Eleanor's diaries. What? She knew Malcolm was looking for her. She wrote about, and she was afraid of him. She wrote that he was the reason she left, that he'd tried to control her inheritance, manipulate her. She called him dangerous. Derek's grip tightened on the phone. Then we use that. We will. But Derek, you need to prepare Maya. This is about to become very public. Her name, her story, all of it. The media will be everywhere. Malcolm's lawyers will try to paint you as opportunistic, her as coached. It's going to be brutal. Derek closed his eyes. She's 8 years old. I know, but she's also strong. You said it yourself. She survived things that would break most adults. She can survive this too, especially with you beside her. That night, Derek sat Maya down at the kitchen table. He'd made her favorite dinner, mac and cheese with cut-up hot dogs, but neither of them was eating. Maya, we need to talk about what happens next. She looked at him with those big brown eyes, already bracing for bad news. Always bracing. The treasure we found, Derek continued. It's worth a lot of money. More money than you can probably imagine. And there are people who want to take it. People who say it belongs to them. Does it? Maya asked quietly. I don't know. But I know what Eleanor wrote in her letter. I know that you found it. And I know that nobody cared about that place until they heard about money. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then, will they take me away from you? No, Derek said firmly. No matter what happens with the money, you stay with me. I promise. Even if we don't get the treasure. Even if we don't get a single dollar. Maya, you're not here because of money. You're here because you belong here. Maya nodded slowly. Then she said something that broke Derek's heart. I don't even care about the money. I just want to stay with you. Derek pulled her into a hug. Then that's what matters most. Everything else we'll figure out together. But even as he held her, Derek knew the fight was just beginning. Malcolm Whitmore had money and power, and lawyers who could argue black was white. And all Derek had was an abandoned treehouse, a letter from a woman who'd been dead for 35 years, and a determination to protect a little girl who'd already been failed by everyone else. It would have to be enough. Because failure wasn't an option. Not for Maya. Not after everything she'd survived to get here. The battle for Eleanor Whitmore's fortune was about to begin. And in the frozen mountains of Montana, a park ranger and an 8-year-old girl were about to take on one of the wealthiest families in San Francisco. The odds were impossible. But then again, Derek had already beaten impossible odds once. On a snowy road, in a blizzard, when he'd stopped for a child everyone else had driven past. Maybe miracles happened more than once. Maybe sometimes, the universe gave second chances. And maybe, just maybe, justice was more than just a word. They were about to find out. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Derek was making breakfast when his phone started ringing. Then it didn't stop. The first call was from a reporter at the Flathead Beacon. Then, the Missoulian. Then, the Associated Press. By noon, satellite trucks were parked outside his cabin, reporters shouting questions every time he looked out the window. Mr. Hayes, is it true you found $100 million treasure? Mr. Hayes, who does the money belong to? Mr. Hayes, is the little girl really a foster child? Derek kept the curtains closed and called Patricia. How did they find out? Court filings are public record, she said grimly. Malcolm Whitmore's lawyers filed their claim yesterday. Every reporter in the state has been combing through it. Derek, it's going to get worse before it gets better. She wasn't wrong. By that evening, the story was national. CNN ran a segment. The Today Show wanted an interview. Social media exploded with opinions from people who'd never set foot in Montana and didn't know Maya existed until that morning. Some said the treasure should go to Maya, that she'd earned it by surviving, by finding it. Others said it belonged to Malcolm Whitmore, that blood and family trumped luck. Still others argued the state should seize everything, that found money should go to public good. Everyone had an opinion. No one asked Maya what she thought. Derek kept her home from school. The principal called to say reporters were camping outside the building, trying to interview 8-year-olds about Maya's story. It wasn't safe. It wasn't fair. That night, Maya sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the TV as her own face appeared on the screen. A photo someone had taken at the hospital after Derek found her, looking small and scared and lost. "Why are they showing that?" Maya asked quietly. "Because people are interested in your story," Derek said, though the words felt hollow. "I don't want to be a story. I just want to be normal." Derek turned off the TV and sat beside her. "I know, sweetheart. But sometimes, life doesn't let us be normal. Sometimes it pushes us into things we didn't ask for. Like the foster homes," Maya said. "Yeah, like the foster homes." They sat in silence for a while. Then Maya said, "Derek, if we have to give back all the money, will you still keep me?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Maya, you are not a transaction. You're not here because of treasure or money, or anything except the fact that I care about you. Do you understand?" She nodded, but Derek could see the doubt in her eyes. She'd been rejected too many times to trust promises completely. The next morning brought worse news. Patricia called at 6 a.m., her voice tight with anger. "The state is filing a claim," she said. "They're arguing that since the property taxes were paid from a defunct trust, the land reverted to state ownership years ago. They want everything." Derek's blood ran cold. "They can do that? They can try. Derek, this is exactly what I was afraid of. Now we're not just fighting Malcolm Whitmore, we're fighting the government." What does that mean for Maya? It means we need to make her story impossible to ignore. We need the public on our side. We need people to see her as more than just a finder, but as someone who deserves this. Derek hesitated. "You mean we need to tell everything about her past?" "Yes, I know you wanted to protect her privacy, but Derek, we're out of options. If we don't control the narrative, someone else will." That afternoon, Patricia released a statement. It detailed Maya's history. Abandoned at 6 months old at Sacred Heart Hospital in Billings. No identifying information except a note that said, "I'm sorry," pinned to her blanket. 12 different foster placements in 7 years. Homes where she was neglected. One where she was locked in a closet for wetting the bed. Another where the foster father had been arrested for fraud. And all his foster children were removed in the middle of the night. The statement described the blizzard. How Maya had run away from her last placement because the foster mother told her she was being sent back to the group home. How she'd walked for 3 days trying to find the frozen treehouse because it was the only place she'd ever seen that felt like magic. How Derek had found her nearly dead and brought her home. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The story went viral. Number Justice for Maya started trending on Twitter. Donations poured into a legal fund Patricia had set up. Letters arrived at Derek's cabin. Thousands of them, from strangers offering support, sharing their own foster care stories, demanding that Maya receive what Eleanor had wanted her to have. But there was also backlash. Malcolm Whitmore gave an interview to the New York Times. He was polished, sympathetic, dressed in an expensive suit that somehow looked humble. "I loved my Aunt Eleanor," he said, his voice breaking at just the right moment. "She struggled with mental illness. She disappeared when I was just 23 years old. My family spent decades looking for her, hoping she was alive. To discover she built this place, that she was living in isolation, it breaks my heart, but her estate belongs to her family. That's what she would have wanted." He didn't mention the journals. He didn't mention Eleanor's letters describing her fear of him. He painted himself as the grieving nephew, and Derek as an opportunist using a traumatized child for profit. Some people believed him. The community of Redstone, Montana had a population of 2,347 people. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the biggest news was usually who won the chili cook-off at the county fair. But when word spread about Maya, about the battle she faced, something extraordinary happened. The town rallied. It started small. The diner put up a sign, Maya's Place, 10% of proceeds to legal fund. The hardware store did the store, Maya's Place, the place, same. The elementary school organized a bake sale. Kids who'd never met Maya made posters with crayons and glitter. We believe in Maya. Then, it grew bigger. The local chapter of foster care advocates organized a march. 300 people walked through town, carrying signs, chanting, demanding justice for a little girl who'd been failed by the system. At a town hall meeting, people stood up one by one to speak. "My daughter was in foster care," said a woman named Jennifer, tears streaming down her face. 16 homes before we adopted her. She's in college now, but she still has nightmares. Maya deserves security. She deserves to never be afraid again. "I was a foster kid," said a young man named Marcus, his voice shaking. "Nobody fought for me, but we can fight for Maya. We have to." Even people who had nothing gave something. An elderly veteran on a fixed income sent $20 to the legal fund with a note, "For Maya. She's a fighter." Derek was overwhelmed. He'd lived in Redstone for 6 years, kept mostly to himself. He'd thought of his neighbors as friendly but distant. Now they were showing up, standing up, refusing to let Maya be swept aside. Patricia's small legal team grew. 2 law firms from Seattle called offering pro bono support. A retired judge volunteered as a consultant. Law students from the University of Montana worked around the clock, researching precedents. They weren't just fighting for money anymore. They were fighting for the principle that a child who'd been abandoned by everyone deserved something good, that Eleanor's wish mattered, that poverty and trauma didn't disqualify someone from dignity. The preliminary hearing was set for March 15th. It would determine whether Maya had any legal standing to claim the treasure at all, or whether it would automatically go to Malcolm Whitmore or the state. The week before the hearing, Patricia sat Derek and Maya down in her office. Maya was wearing a dress someone from the community had bought her. Derek wore his only suit, borrowed from Robert Chen. "I need you both to understand what's going to happen in that courtroom," Patricia said gently. "They're going to ask you questions, Maya. Some of them will be hard. They're going to ask about your foster homes, about why you ran away, about how you found the treehouse. You have to tell the truth, even when it hurts." Maya nodded, her small face serious. "And Derek, they're going to question your motives. They'll imply you're using Maya, that you found her and saw an opportunity. You need to stay calm, no matter what they say." "I can do that," Derek said, though his jaw was already tight. "There's one more thing," Patricia said. She pulled out a leather-bound journal, one of Eleanor's. "I've been reading through all of Eleanor's writings, and I found something that changes everything." She opened to a page marked with a yellow tab and began to read. June 11th, 2004. "I saw a girl today, hiking near the boundary of my property with what I assume was her foster family. She was maybe 6 years old, dark hair, sad eyes. She wandered off from the group, and I watched her from my observation deck. She found a bird's nest that had fallen, 3 baby birds dead inside. She cried over them, actually cried. For these tiny creatures, no one else would mourn. The foster mother yelled at her to hurry up, that they didn't have time for her nonsense. And I thought, this is why I saved everything. For children like her, for the lost ones, for the ones who cry over birds. If anyone ever finds this place, I hope it's someone like that girl, someone who sees beauty in broken things." The room was silent. "That was Maya," Derek said, his voice cracking. "She told me about that hike, about finding baby birds. She said she'd gotten in trouble for crying." Patricia nodded, tears in her own eyes. "Eleanor saw Maya, years before any of this, and she wrote repeatedly about wanting her fortune to go to lost children. Not her family, not the state. Children who'd been abandoned and forgotten. Can we use this in court? Derek asked. Oh, we're definitely using this in court, Patricia said, because this isn't about property law anymore. This is about honoring a woman's dying wish. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the back, reporters crammed into the gallery. Judge Catherine Morrison, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, surveyed the chaos with visible disapproval. Order, she said, her voice cutting through the murmur. This is a court of law, not a circus. Anyone who cannot maintain decorum will be removed. The room quieted. Malcolm Whitmore sat at the plaintiff's table with 3 lawyers in expensive suits. He looked confident, relaxed, like this was already decided in his favor. The state's attorney, a thin man named Douglas Carr, sat at another table with his own team. Derek, Maya, and Patricia sat at the defense table. Maya looked tiny in her chair, her feet barely touching the ground. Derek held her hand under the table. Judge Morrison reviewed the case files. Then she looked up. This court will determine whether the minor child, Maya Reeves, has legal standing to claim the property and assets found within the structure known as the Whitmore Treehouse. We'll hear arguments from all parties, starting with Mr. Whitmore's counsel. Malcolm's lead lawyer, a silver-haired man named Richard Thornton, stood. His argument was smooth, practiced, devastating. Your Honor, this is a simple case of inheritance law. Eleanor Whitmore was the legal daughter of Vincent Whitmore. She disappeared in 1989 and was declared legally dead in 1996. Her assets should have transferred to her heirs at that time. The fact that certain assets were hidden does not change their ownership. My client, Malcolm Whitmore, is Eleanor's only living blood relative. He is the rightful heir. Thornton paused for effect. The respondents would have you believe that a letter written by a mentally unstable woman living in isolation supersedes decades of inheritance law. It does not. Eleanor was clearly suffering from mental illness. She abandoned her family, faked her death, lived as a hermit. Her judgment was impaired. Any transfer she attempted to make would be invalid. He gestured toward Maya. As for the child, while her story is sympathetic, sympathy does not create legal rights. She trespassed on private property and discovered assets she has no claim to. To reward trespassing sets a dangerous precedent. Judge Morrison's expression gave nothing away. Mr. Carr, the state's position. Douglas Carr stood. Your Honor, the state's position is that the property in question reverted to state ownership in 2009, when the Whitmore Trust became defunct. All assets on state land belong to the state. We propose that the treasure be liquidated and deposited into the state's general fund for public benefit. Miss Chen, the judge said, turning to Patricia. Patricia stood slowly. She looked at Maya, then at the judge. Your Honor, this case is about more than property law. It's about honoring the explicit wishes of a woman who gave up everything for freedom. Eleanor Whitmore wasn't mentally ill. She was traumatized by a controlling family and chose to live on her own terms. Her journals, which span 17 years, show a clear, intelligent, creative mind. She documented her life meticulously. She wrote about her fears, her hopes, her dreams, and she wrote, repeatedly, about wanting her fortune to help lost children. Patricia picked up one of the journals. May I read from Eleanor's entries, Your Honor? Proceed. Patricia read passage after passage about Eleanor's abuse at the hands of her family, about Malcolm specifically, describing his attempts to control her inheritance when she was just 23, his manipulation, his threats, about her decision to disappear rather than be consumed by family expectations. And then, Patricia read the entry about Maya, about the little girl who cried over baby birds. Eleanor Whitmore saw Maya Reeves 6 years before Maya found the treehouse, Patricia said. her voice ringing through the courtroom. She saw a child who'd been rejected by the system, and she wrote that she hoped someone like that would find her sanctuary. Your Honor, Maya didn't just stumble on this treasure. In a very real way, Eleanor left it for her. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order. The hearing lasted 6 hours. Witnesses testified. A psychiatrist reviewed Eleanor's journals and declared her mentally competent. A property law expert discussed abandonment and adverse possession. A child welfare advocate described Maya's 12 placements, each one more heartbreaking than the last. Then Derek took the stand. Malcolm's lawyer, Thornton, approached him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Hayes, you found Maya Reeves on February 7th, is that correct? Yes. And the treehouse? Approximately 3 weeks later? Yes. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Derek's jaw tightened. I wouldn't call finding a dying child in a blizzard convenient. But you did benefit from it. You've become something of a local hero. You have custody of a child who might be worth millions. Some would call that opportunistic. Patricia started to object, but Derek spoke first. Some would call it being a decent human being. I stopped because a little girl needed help. I fought for her because she deserves better than what she's gotten. If that makes me opportunistic, then I guess I'm guilty. Thornton pressed on. You're not a wealthy man, are you, Mr. Hayes? No. You live paycheck to paycheck? I live within my means. So, the prospect of access to millions of dollars through this child must have been tempting. Derek leaned forward. I don't want access to Maya's money. I want Maya to have security. I want her to never be cold or hungry or scared again. I want her to know that someone chose her, not because of what she could give them, but because she deserves to be chosen. If you can't understand that, then I feel sorry for you. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Morrison banged her gavel, but didn't look displeased. Then, it was Maya's turn. Patricia had prepared her. But walking to the witness stand, Maya looked terrified. She was sworn in, her small voice barely audible, as she promised to tell the truth. Judge Morrison leaned forward, her stern expression softening. Maya, I know this is scary, but I need to ask you some questions. If you need a break, just let me know. Okay? Maya nodded. Patricia approached gently. Maya, can you tell the court about the night you ran away? Maya's voice was tiny. The foster lady, Mrs. Hendricks, she said I was going back to the group home. She said I was too much trouble and she couldn't handle me anymore. Why did she say that? I broke a plate. It was an accident, but she said I was careless and useless. Patricia's eyes glistened. What did you do? I packed my backpack, I took my drawings, and I left. Where did you plan to go? To the frozen castle, the treehouse. I'd seen it before, and it was the only place I could think of that felt safe. Even though it was snowing? Even though you had no coat, no shoes? Maya nodded. I didn't care if I died. I just didn't want to go back to another home where nobody wanted me. The courtroom was dead silent. Several people were openly crying. Thornton approached for cross-examination, but his expression had changed. He looked uncomfortable. Maya, you've been in many foster homes, correct? 12. And none of them worked out. Maya's voice grew smaller. No. Why do you think that is? Patricia stood. Objection, Your Honor. This child is not responsible for systemic failures in foster care. Sustained, Judge Morrison said sharply, glaring at Thornton. Rephrase, counselor, or move on. Thornton seemed to deflate. No further questions. The final witness was Dr. Helen Park, a child psychologist who'd evaluated Maya. She testified about the trauma Maya had endured, the resilience she'd shown, and the attachment she'd formed with Derek. In my professional opinion, Dr. Park said, Maya Reeves has found stability for the first time in her life. Derek Hayes provides her with consistent care, emotional support, and a safe environment. Disrupting that would be profoundly damaging. And the money? Judge Morrison asked. How would sudden wealth affect a child like Maya? If managed properly, it could provide the security she's never had: education, healthcare, freedom from the instability that's defined her life. But only if she remains with a guardian who prioritizes her well-being over the wealth itself. Dr. Park looked at Derek. I believe Mr. Hayes is that person. The hearing concluded on a Friday afternoon. Judge Morrison announced she would review all evidence and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were agony. Derek barely slept. Maya had nightmares, waking up crying, convinced they were going to send her away. The media camped outside, wouldn't leave. Every day brought new speculation, new opinions, new people claiming to know what should happen to money they'd never seen, and a girl they'd never met. Patricia called every few days with updates. The judge is thorough, she said. That's good for us. She's not rushing to judgment. On the 13th day, Patricia's phone rang at 5 in the morning. Derek saw her name on the screen, and his heart stopped. The judge released her decision, Patricia said. Her voice was shaking, but Derek couldn't tell if it was good news or bad. Derek, you need to sit down. Just tell me. We won. Derek, we won. Derek's knees gave out. He sat heavily on the floor, phone pressed to his ear. What? Judge Morrison ruled in Maya's favor. She said Eleanor's intent was clear, that the journals constitute a valid expression of her wishes, and that Maya's status, as the finder combined with Eleanor's explicit desire for the fortune to help lost children, creates a compelling claim. Malcolm Whitmore's petition is denied. Derek couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. But Derek, listen. The judge didn't give Maya everything. His stomach dropped. What? Judge Morrison established the Eleanor Whitmore Foundation for Foster Children. It's a charity that will receive 2/3 of the treasure, approximately $163 million. It will fund foster care reforms, college scholarships, housing assistance, mental health services, all the things kids like Maya need. And Maya? Maya receives the remaining third, approximately $82 million, held in trust until she's 18, with Derek Hayes as trustee and guardian. The judge said, and I quote, "This child deserves security, education, and the opportunity to build a life free from the trauma that has defined her childhood. But she also deserves to carry forward Eleanor Whitmore's legacy of helping others." This ruling honors both needs. Derek was crying now, huge, heaving sobs he couldn't control. She's really going to be okay. She's going to be more than okay. Derek, you did it. You saved her. Derek looked up to see Maya standing in her doorway, rubbing her eyes. Derek, why are you crying? He held out his arms, and she ran to him. He held her so tight. This little girl, who'd been thrown away, who'd survived everything, who'd found treasure, and maybe, just maybe, had been found by someone who would never let her go. We won, sweetheart, he whispered into her hair. You're safe. You're going to be safe forever. Maya pulled back, looking at him with those huge brown eyes. Does that mean I get to stay with you? Forever, Derek said. If you want to. I want to, Maya said. And then she was crying too, and they held each other on the kitchen floor as the sun rose over the Montana mountains, painting everything gold. Somewhere in the frozen forest, in a treehouse built by a woman who'd given up everything for freedom, the wind moved through empty rooms. Eleanor Whitmore had been gone for 21 years, but her gift, her final act of love for children she'd never meet, had just changed the world. And in a small cabin filled with morning light, a ranger and a little girl who'd both been lost had finally found home. The paperwork to make it official took 6 months. 6 months of background checks, home studies, psychological evaluations, and court appearances. 6 months of Maya waking up every morning asking, "Is it real? Am I really staying?" And every morning Derek would answer, Yes, you're really staying. On October 3rd, in a small courtroom in Missoula, Judge Morrison signed the final adoption decree. Maya Reeves became Maya Hayes. Derek had asked her if she wanted to keep her birth name, and she'd shaken her head so hard her dark hair flew. "I want your name," she'd said. "I want to belong to someone." When the judge handed them the certificate, Maya stared at it for a long time. Her finger traced over the words, Maya Elizabeth Hayes, daughter of Derek James Hayes. She looked up at Derek, with tears streaming down her face. "I have a family now," she whispered. Derek pulled her into his arms. "You've always had a family. Now it's just official." The courtroom erupted in applause. Patricia was crying. Detective Martinez was crying. Even the bailiff wiped his eyes. In the back row, half the town of Redstone had showed up to witness the moment. Jennifer, who'd organized the first march, held up a sign, "Welcome home, Maya Hayes." The media frenzy eventually died down, though it took longer than Derek expected. For months, reporters wanted updates, interviews, photo opportunities. Derek refused most of them. This was Maya's life, not a television special. But he agreed to one interview with a journalist from The Atlantic who'd covered foster care reform for years. The resulting article, titled "The Girl Who Found a Fortune and a Father," was sensitive, thoughtful, and focused not on the money, but on the systemic failures that had nearly cost Maya her life. The article sparked a national conversation about foster care. Within months, 3 states passed new legislation improving oversight and increasing funding. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was a start. And it was all because people had learned Maya's name and decided her story mattered. The Eleanor Whitmore Foundation officially launched in January, 1 year after Derek had found Maya on that frozen road. Patricia helped Derek assemble a board of directors, child welfare experts, former foster youth, therapists, educators, people who understood what kids like Maya needed because they'd either lived it or dedicated their lives to fixing it. The foundation's mission was simple: ensure no child felt unwanted, unsafe, or invisible. They started with emergency grants. Foster families who needed help with unexpected expenses, medical bills, school supplies, winter coats, small things that made enormous differences. A 15-year-old girl in Billings got a laptop for college applications. A boy in Kalispell got the surgery his foster parents couldn't afford. Twin sisters in Great Falls got to stay together when their foster family received support for a bigger apartment. Then came the scholarships. Full-ride college funding for any foster youth in Montana who wanted to pursue higher education. No minimum GPA requirement, no perfect attendance needed. Just the desire to build a better future. Within the first year, the foundation helped 372 children across the state. But Derek knew the biggest project was still waiting. The Treehouse, Eleanor's sanctuary. He'd visited it several times. Since the court ruling, always alone, always with a sense of reverence. The structure was sound, despite decades of neglect. The craftsmanship was too good to fail. But it needed work. Heating, plumbing, safety upgrades. Derek hired a team of architects who specialized in historic preservation. Their instructions were simple: honor Eleanor's vision while making it functional for its new purpose. It took 18 months. They added solar panels that blended with the roof. They installed a modern heating system hidden behind Eleanor's original woodwork. They weatherproofed the exterior without changing its magical appearance. They built a small cabin at the base for staff and added accessible pathways through the forest. But they kept everything that mattered: the library with Eleanor's books, the art studio with her paintings still on the walls, the observation deck with her telescope, the journals, carefully preserved in climate-controlled cases. The Treehouse became the Eleanor Whitmore Retreat, center for foster youth, a place where kids who'd been through trauma could come for weekends or summer camps or just quiet afternoons. A place to heal, to read, to paint, to stare at stars, and remember that the universe was bigger than their pain. Maya was 10 years old when the retreat center opened. She'd grown 3 inches and gained weight, her face fuller, her eyes brighter. She still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched when people raised their voices. Trauma didn't disappear with money or love. But she was healing. She attended the local elementary school now, made friends, joined the art club. She was quiet still, watchful, but she smiled more, laughed sometimes, brought home drawings that Derek hung on every available surface, and she visited the treehouse often. It was her discovery, her special place. The staff knew her, welcomed her, let her curl up in Eleanor's reading nook, with hot chocolate and books. One Saturday afternoon, Derek found her in the library, showing 2 younger girls around. "This is where Eleanor wrote her journals," Maya explained, her voice confident. She was alone here for 17 years, but she was happy. She chose freedom over money. She chose herself. The 2 girls, both foster kids from Kalispell, listened with wide eyes. "And you found all this?" one asked. Maya nodded. "I was lost in a blizzard. I thought I was going to die. But I remembered seeing this place years before, and something told me to find it again. So I did." "Were you scared?" the other girl asked. Maya thought about it. "I was more scared of going back to another home where nobody wanted me. The blizzard was just cold. Rejection is colder." Derek's throat tightened. He backed away quietly, letting Maya have this moment. She was becoming something remarkable. Not because of money, but because she'd survived and chosen to help others survive too. The years passed. Maya turned 11, then 12, then 13. She shot up suddenly, all legs and elbows, her childhood roundness giving way to adolescent angles. Her dark hair grew long. She started wearing the kind of clothes teenage girls wore, though she still preferred jeans and hoodies to anything fancy. Derek navigated parenthood as best he could. He was strict about homework, lenient about curfew. He learned to braid hair from YouTube videos. He survived the great eyebrow-piercing debate of 2018. Compromise. She could get her ears pierced twice. He attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every art show. The money sat mostly untouched in trust accounts. Derek used it for Maya's needs, education, therapy, college savings, but they still lived in the cabin, still shopped at the same grocery store, still ate mac and cheese on Tuesdays, because it was tradition. "I don't want her to think money solves everything," Derek told Patricia one day. "You're doing great," Patricia assured him. "She's grounded. She's kind. She knows what matters." Maya's therapist agreed. Dr. Park, who'd testified at the hearing, had continued working with Maya over the years. "Maya has integrated her trauma," Dr. Park told Derek during a check-in session when Maya was 14. "She doesn't minimize what she went through, but she doesn't let it define her. She's using her experience to build empathy. That's extraordinary for someone her age." It was true. Maya had started volunteering at the Foundation's offices every weekend. She helped sort donation requests, wrote thank you notes, even spoke at a few fundraisers about what the Foundation meant to kids like her. But her real passion emerged when she was 15. She started a blog called Foster Voices, where current and former foster youth could share their stories anonymously. It started small, just a few posts, then dozens, then hundreds. The blog went viral. News outlets picked it up. Maya was invited to speak at a conference on child welfare reform in Washington, D.C. Derek went, with her, of course. He stood in the back of a room filled with legislators, social workers, and advocates, as his daughter, his Maya, stood at a podium and spoke. "My name is Maya Hayes," she began, her voice steady. "I was abandoned at 6 months old. I lived in 12 foster homes before I was 8. I was told I was too much trouble, Too quiet, too loud, too needy, too independent. I was told nobody would ever want to keep me. She paused, looking out at the crowd. I believed them. And on February 7th, when I was 8 years old, I walked into a blizzard without shoes, because I thought dying was better than being rejected again. The room was silent, but someone stopped. A park ranger named Derek Hayes saw a little girl who needed help, and he helped. He didn't ask what I could give him. He didn't calculate whether I was worth the trouble. He just stopped. Maya's voice grew stronger. The foster care system is broken. Not because there aren't good people. There are. But because there aren't enough of them. Because caseworkers have impossible loads. Because funding is inadequate. Because children are treated like statistics instead of humans. She pulled out a paper. Last year, the Eleanor Whitmore Foundation served 843 children across Montana. We provided emergency funding, scholarships, therapy, housing support. But that's just Montana. There are over 400,000 children in foster care nationwide. 400,000 kids who need someone to stop. Maya looked directly at a senator in the front row. You have the power to stop. To invest in children instead of just talking about family values. To fund programs that work. To ensure kids like me don't have to walk into blizzards to escape a system that failed them. The applause was thunderous. The senator stood, then others followed. Derek wiped tears from his face, his chest bursting with pride. After the speech, dozens of people wanted to talk to Maya. Other former foster youth thanked her. Advocates asked for her input on proposed legislation. One woman, a senator from Oregon, took Maya's hands. You're going to change things, the senator said. You already have. By the time Maya turned 16, the Eleanor Whitmore Foundation had expanded beyond Montana. Chapters opened in Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota. The model was replicated in other states. Foster youth across the country received support because Eleanor Whitmore had built a treehouse and Maya Hayes had found it. The foundation's annual budget was now $40 million, funded by investment returns from Eleanor's treasure. They'd helped over 5,000 children. Dozens of those kids had gone to college, many the first in their foster families. Some became teachers, social workers, advocates. Others just became adults who didn't carry the weight of abandonment alone. And at the center of it all was Maya, not as a figurehead or mascot, but as a real voice. She was on the Foundation's Youth Advisory Board. She testified before state legislatures. She mentored younger foster kids. She wrote articles, gave interviews, showed up. She also got straight A's, played soccer, obsessed over a boy band Derek pretended not to know about, and argued about fair curfews like any teenager. You're so annoying, she told Derek one night when he insisted she be home by 10. That's literally my job, he replied. She rolled her eyes, but hugged him before leaving for a friend's house. Love you, Dad. Dad. She'd started calling him that when she was 11, tentatively at first, then with increasing confidence. It never stopped making Derek's heart catch. The grand reopening of the Eleanor Whitmore Retreat Center happened on a crisp October morning, 5 years after the court decision. The forest blazed with autumn color. The treehouse gleamed, restored to glory but enhanced with purpose. 200 people gathered in the clearing. Former foster youth, foundation board members, donors, politicians, community members. News crews lined the perimeter. This wasn't just a ribbon cutting. It was a celebration of what broken things could become when given care and purpose. Derek stood with Patricia, both of them older now, grayer. Patricia had become the foundation's executive director. Derek served on the board while continuing his work as a ranger, though he'd cut back to part-time to spend more time with Maya. Can you believe this? Patricia whispered as they watched the crowd gather. No, Derek admitted. Sometimes I still think I'm going to wake up and find it was all a dream. It's real. You made it real. Maya made it real. Maya stood near the front, dressed in a simple blue dress, her long hair pulled back. At 16, she was poised, confident, but still carried traces of the frightened 8-year-old Derek had found. Still twisted her hands when nervous. Still went quiet when overwhelmed. The ceremony began. The foundation president spoke. The governor of Montana gave remarks. A former foster youth who'd received a scholarship shared how it changed her life. Then, it was Maya's turn. She walked to the microphone, and for just a moment, Derek saw her hesitate. Then she straightened her shoulders and began. 5 years ago, I walked through a blizzard because I thought I had no value, she said. I'd been told so many times that I was unwanted that I believed it. I thought if I disappeared, nobody would notice. Her voice was steady, clear, but I was wrong. Someone noticed. Someone stopped. And that single act of kindness led to all of this. She gestured at the treehouse behind her. Eleanor Whitmore built this place as a refuge from a world that tried to control her. She wrote in her journals about wanting it to help lost children. Kids, like me. Kids who needed to know they mattered. Maya pulled out a worn journal. Eleanor's, carefully preserved. Eleanor wrote, "The greatest tragedy is not poverty or hardship, but the belief that you are unworthy of love. If my fortune can convince even one child that they are wanted, that they have value, that they deserve safety and joy, then every year I spent alone was worth it." Maya closed the journal. This retreat center will serve hundreds of foster children every year. They'll come here to heal, to learn, to remember that they're not defined by what happened to them, but by what they choose to become. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes finding Derek. I was a lost child in a frozen forest. Now I'm someone who helps other lost children find their way home. That's Eleanor's legacy. That's what this place represents. Her voice broke slightly. We can't save every kid. We can't fix everything that's broken. But we can stop. We can notice. We can care. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything. The applause started before she finished. People stood, crying, clapping, some shouting support. Derek made his way to the front and pulled Maya into a hug. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "I learned from you," she whispered back. After the ceremony, as people toured the treehouse and staff served refreshments, Maya slipped away. Derek found her an hour later in Eleanor's observation deck, staring out at the forest. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, just thinking about how different everything could have been. If you hadn't stopped, if I'd died on that road, if Eleanor hadn't left her fortune to lost children. But I did stop. You survived. And here we are. Maya turned to look at him. Do you ever wonder why? Why everything happened the way it did? Derek thought about it. About the series of small miracles that had led them here. A trucker who'd reported seeing something. A park ranger who'd taken a rural road during a blizzard. A little girl who'd remembered seeing a treehouse years before. A reclusive woman who'd written a letter to whoever found her sanctuary. I think sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we need, Derek said. Not what we expect, not what we plan, but what we need. Maya smiled. That's very philosophical for a park ranger. I've had a lot of time to think about it. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the mountains. 5 years since that frozen February night. 5 years of healing, growing, building. 5 years of learning what family really meant. 2 months later, on a December afternoon heavy with fresh snow, Derek got a call from dispatch. A hiker had found something on the old Forest Service road near Clearwater Junction. Not something. Someone. Derek's stomach dropped. A child. Yes. Boy. Maybe 6 or 7. Hypothermic. Unresponsive. Ambulance is en route, but you're closer. Derek was already moving. Maya was at the foundation office in town. Safe and warm. He radioed Robert Chen to let him know. then pushed his truck as fast as the icy roads allowed. He found the boy exactly where dispatch said, huddled against a tree, lips blue, eyes closed. He was small, painfully thin, wearing a jacket that was 3 sizes too big, and shoes held together with duct tape. Derek's training kicked in. He wrapped the boy in emergency blankets, checked his vitals, radioed for the ambulance to hurry. But while he worked, his mind was screaming, "Not again. Please, not again." The boy's eyes fluttered open. He stared at Derek with fear and confusion. "It's okay," Derek said softly. "I'm here to help. You're safe now." "They said nobody would come," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible. "I came," Derek said. "And you're going to be okay." The ambulance arrived. They loaded the boy and rushed him to Mercy General, the same hospital where Maya had been taken 5 years ago. Derek followed, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. At the hospital, Dr. Chen, older but still sharp, came out after an hour. "He'll make it. Hypothermia, malnutrition, signs of long-term neglect. He's a foster kid. Ran away from a placement in Lincoln County 3 days ago." Derek closed his eyes, history repeating. "His name is James," Dr. Chen continued. "He's 7 years old. Been in the system since he was 3. He told the nurses he ran away because his foster father hit him, and nobody believed him when he told his caseworker." "God," Derek breathed. He called Maya. She answered immediately. "Dad, is everything okay?" He told her about James, about finding him, about the familiar, terrible story. "I'm coming," Maya said. "Right now. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Maya arrived at the hospital within 30 minutes. She found Derek in the waiting room and sat beside him without speaking. They'd done this before, in different roles. Now they were here together. After another hour, a nurse came out. "He's asking for you." The ranger who found him. Derek stood, then looked at Maya. "Come with me." They walked to the room together. James was small in the hospital bed, hooked to monitors, wrapped in heated blankets. His eyes were enormous in his thin face. "Hi, James," Derek said gently. "I'm Derek. I'm the ranger who found you. This is my daughter, Maya." James stared at Maya. She was lost too? Maya moved closer to the bed. "I was. 5 years ago. In a blizzard, just like you. Did they send you back? To the bad place?" "No," Maya said softly. "Derek adopted me. I've been with him ever since. Nobody wants to adopt kids like us," James said matter-of-factly. "We're too broken." Maya pulled up a chair and sat, so she was eye-level with him. "James, listen to me. You're not broken. You're surviving. And surviving takes more strength than most people will ever understand." "I tried to tell them," James whispered, "about what he did, but nobody listened." "I believe you," Maya said, "and we're going to make sure you're safe. I promise." She reached out and took his small hand. Derek watched, his throat tight, as his daughter, who'd once been exactly where this boy was, offered comfort in a way only she could. Over the next weeks, Maya visited James in the hospital, then in his temporary placement. She brought him books, played card games, just sat with him when words felt like too much. Derek worked with social services to ensure James was placed somewhere safe, while investigations into his allegations continued. They were substantiated. The foster father was arrested. James was freed from going back. And when Maya came home one night and said, "Dad, what if we fostered James? Just until they find him a permanent home," Derek looked at his daughter, this extraordinary human who'd come so far, and said, "Yeah, I think we can do that." James moved into the guest room in March. It was supposed to be temporary, just a few months. But weeks became months, and months became something more. James fit. He and Maya bickered like siblings. He followed Derek around, asking endless questions about nature and animals, and whether park rangers could arrest people. By the time summer arrived, Derek knew they weren't letting this kid go either. The adoption was finalized on James's 8th birthday. James Whitmore Hayes, named partially after James, but also after Eleanor, who'd started all of this. Maya cried through the whole ceremony. Derek cried. Even James, tough little James, who'd survived so much, cried. That night, as Derek tucked James into bed, the boy said, "I'm glad I got lost in the woods." "Me too, buddy. Me too." In Maya's room, Derek found her at her desk, working on a blog post. "Writing about James?" he asked. "About all of it," she said. "About how 5 years ago I thought my life was over, and now I have a family. A real one. About how Eleanor's gift keeps giving. About how one act of kindness in a blizzard created ripples that are still spreading." Derek kissed the top of her head. "I'm proud of you. Every single day. Dad," Maya said, as he turned to leave. "Yeah? Do you think Eleanor would be happy with what we did with her treasure?" Derek thought about the woman who'd given up everything for freedom, who'd written about wanting to help lost children, who'd left a letter for whoever found her sanctuary. "I think she'd be thrilled," he said. "You didn't just honor her legacy, you became it." The Eleanor Whitmore Foundation continued to grow. By 2028, when Maya was 18 and preparing for college, the foundation had served over 12,000 children across 11 states. The retreat center hosted 300 kids a year. The scholarship program had sent 400 foster youth to college. New legislation passed in 7 states improving foster care oversight. And it all started with an 8-year-old girl who walked into a blizzard, a park ranger who stopped, and a reclusive heiress who believed lost children deserved freedom. Maya chose to stay close for college, attending the University of Montana to study social work. She wanted to fix the system from the inside. James was 10 now, thriving, funny, still occasionally waking from nightmares, but mostly just being a kid. Derek was 59, grayer, slower, but happier than he'd ever been. He'd found his purpose not in mountains or trails, but in family, in showing up, in stopping when others drove past. On the 5-year anniversary of the retreat center's opening, Maya gave another speech. She was 18 now, confident, powerful, every inch Eleanor's heir. "A woman I never met saved my life," she told the gathered crowd. Eleanor Whitmore could have left her fortune to charities or museums or family. Instead, she left it to whoever found it, hoping they'd be someone who understood what it meant to be lost. Maya paused, looking out at the faces watching her. Former foster youth, advocates, donors, children currently in the system. I was that someone, and I've spent the last 10 years trying to pay forward what she gave me. Not just money. Hope. The belief that we're all worth saving, that none of us are too broken or too much trouble or too anything to deserve love and safety. Her voice grew stronger. To every foster child listening, whether you're here or watching online or sitting in a group home thinking nobody cares, someone cares. You matter. Your story matters. And the world is better with you in it. She smiled, and Derek could see both the frightened 8-year-old and the powerful young woman she'd become. Eleanor Whitmore built a castle in the frozen woods. I found it when I was dying, and together, we're making sure no child ever feels that alone again. The applause was deafening. And as Maya stepped away from the microphone, Derek thought about miracles, about how sometimes the universe orchestrates impossible things, about how one decision to stop on a snowy road had changed not just 2 lives, but thousands. They drove home together that night. Derek, Maya, and James, their little family that had formed from loss and love and impossible odds. As they pulled up to the cabin, James, already asleep in the back seat, Maya turned to Derek. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For stopping. For everything that came after." Derek reached over and squeezed her hand. "Thank you for being worth stopping for." Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in attics or trunks or frozen castles in the woods. Sometimes they're found in moments of choice, in decisions to help when it's easier to keep driving, in the courage to love when you've been hurt, in the belief that everyone, absolutely everyone, deserves a chance to be found. Maya Hayes had found a fortune worth $245 million, but the real treasure was the life she built with it, the children she helped, the family she created, the legacy she carried forward. And it all began with bloody footprints in the snow and a man who decided one freezing night that every life mattered enough to stop. Anyone can change the world if they're brave enough to stop when others keep driving, strong enough to love when it's easier to walk away, and wise enough to know that sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones we help others find. As Maya Hayes packed for her first day of college, she placed a worn photograph on her dorm room desk. In it, an 8-year-old girl with scared eyes stood beside a frozen treehouse, holding the hand of a park ranger who'd chosen to stop. Behind them, icicles caught the winter sun like diamonds, and in that moment, captured forever, you could see the exact instant when two lost souls found home. Because for Maya and Derek and every child the Eleanor Whitmore Foundation would go on to help, the frozen treehouse wasn't just where millions were hidden, it was where hope was found. And that was worth more than all the treasure in the world. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to keep discovering what happens when ordinary people do extraordinary things. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe everyone deserves someone who will stop.